Hello, my name is Swapnil, and I am here to talk with you about the work that I've done in collaboration with my colleagues Nishant, Chauhan, Avigyan, Chatterjee, and Professor Kusala Rajendran. I will be presenting an overview of our analysis of time frequency energy distributions of earthquakes from the KiK-net strong motion network in Japan. This illustration shows a sample result from the waveform inversion of teleseismic data, which we use for validation of our approaches and with which we compare our strong motion results. This particular result is for the 2011 April 7 magnitude 7.1 Miyagi earthquake. On the top, you have the focal mechanism and slip distribution, useful in representing the rupture propagation direction. Our focus is mainly on the lower part of the illustration, that is the moment rate function, which shows the energy release as a function of time. Our primary aim is to represent this energy release or capture this trend through time frequency analysis tools. Our motivation for the study was twofold. The first was to harness time frequency analysis tools which examine the seismic waveform energy on the time frequency plane, but combine this analysis with empirical mode decomposition. As this illustration from a 2014 review shows, several time frequency analysis tools are used, usually directly applied to the complete signal. Even then, conventional time frequency analysis tools like the short time Fourier transform or STFT and continuous wavelet transforms or CWT, and relatively newer methods, the Hilbert-Huang transform or HHT among them, provide information on the variation of energy throughout an event. Our research focused on first separating the strong motion records using EMD or empirical mode decomposition, and then applying the time frequency analysis tools to these decomposed constituent waveforms. Empirical mode decomposition, first proposed by Huang and others in 1998, separates a signal into multiple frequency components, which are called intrinsic mode functions or IMFs. The advantage of this decomposition is that it does not rely on any predefined basis. For example, Fourier analysis relies on a sinusoidal basis. Moreover, EMD is suited to nonlinear and non-station signals. This example from Zhang et al. 2003 gives an intuition about what EMD does. The recorded signal YFT on the left, which consists of decaying waves and high-frequency noise, is decomposed into 5 IMF components on the right, separating the noise and the signal. A second motivation was using the time frequency analysis techniques to study the differing patterns of energy and frequency content that vary with the tectonic setting and depth of origin of an earthquake, illustrated in this figure from a 2013 study by Ye and Kanamori. This schematic shows a cross-section of the Japan Trench with the oceanic Pacific plate subducting under Japan. The x-axis shows the distance of the events from the Japan Trench in kilometers, and the y-axis shows the hypocentral depth in kilometers. In this presentation, I will primarily refer to 3 tectonic settings. Region 1 with outer rise intraplate earthquakes sourced offshore of the trench. Region 2 with intraslab events which occur within the subducting slabs. And interplate earthquakes that originate on the interface between the two interacting plates of the subduction zones, marked as regions A, B, and C. As seen in the Fourier amplitude spectra on the left, Ye et al. Observed increasing spectral amplitudes, that is the y-axis values, from interplate to intraslab events, especially at higher frequencies. Within the interplate setting, they observed an increase in the high frequency energy and energy to moment ratios with depth, as seen in figure C, and subdivided the region into 3 domains, A, B, and C. In a preliminary study, Chauhan 2019 applied EMD to strong motion data from 2 earthquakes in the Japan Trench, an intraslab and interplate event. The figure shows the decomposed IMFs for the 2 events, with their corresponding Fourier spectra on the right showing a decrease in frequency towards the higher IMFs. The Fourier spectra also show consistently higher spectral amplitudes for the intraslab event on the left, which is in red. As I said at the outset of this talk, our main interest was in the source signal, possibly contained in one or more of these IMFs. In their 2003 study, Zhang and others employed EMD in tandem with finite fault inversion of strong motion data from the 1994 Northridge, California earthquake. They posited that IMFs 2 to 5 represented the source rupture process, a general progression away from the hypocenter from IMF 2 to 5. This figure shows this migration in the slip amplitudes for the IMF components 2 to 5. Keeping this in mind, Chauhan 2019 employed the Pearson correlation coefficient to identify the IMFs that best capture the characteristics of the original signal. For the two earthquakes, an intraslab and interplate event, he computed the correlation between the FFT, STFT, and CWT of the original signal and the individual IMFs. The figure shows the results from correlation analysis for both earthquakes with the three panels representing the three stations used in the study. The x-axis represents the 10 IMFs and the y-axis shows their correlation with the original signal. The different lines represent the Fourier spectrum, the spectrogram, and the scaleogram for the two earthquakes. Based on the correlation analysis results, Chauhan 2019 proposed a linear combination of IMFs 3 and 4 possibly best representing the earthquake signal. But the correlation did not hold for all stations, and we perhaps needed to have a more well-defined basis for the selection of stations. In the next stage, Chatterjee, Natarajan, and Rajendran in 2018 used teleseismic and strong motion data in combination. They used the Kikuchi-Kanamori teleseismic body wave inversion program to determine the faulting mechanism, slip distribution, and moment rate function. They also generated the spectrograms of low-frequency IMFs decomposed from the strong motion recordings, which complemented the moment rate function. They observed that the shape and duration of moment rate functions, or MRFs, were comparable with the energy patches seen in the spectrograms. The figures highlighted in red on the left show the results from the two datasets for the 2011 intraslab event. Similarly, on the right, we observe multiple pulses in both the MRF and the spectrogram for the 2012 Kamaishi interplate event. Based on these results, there was scope for improvement in resolution and to obtain a more direct representation of the MRF. To enhance the resolution of the time frequency energy distributions, we adopted Hilbert spectral analysis. The combination of EMD and Hilbert spectral analysis is HHT, or the Hilbert-Huang transform. Here, we take the Hilbert transform of the signal, in this case each IMF, which focuses on the signal's local properties through convolution with the reciprocal of time. From this, we get the amplitude and frequency values as a function of time. Plotting the squares of these amplitude values over a time frequency plane gives us the Hilbert spectrum, which is equivalent to the spectrogram or scaleogram in its representation. These three plots show a comparison between the spectrogram, scaleogram, and the Hilbert spectrum, with the Hilbert spectrum on the right giving higher resolution. The next thing we worked on was to obtain a more direct representation of the MRF. For this, we introduced certain bounds on the selection of stations and the selection of IMFs. Using these proposed bounds, we developed a time frequency analysis analog of the moment rate function representing the source energy release. We analyzed 7 earthquakes in the Japan Trench, originating in the 3 tectonic settings that we discussed previously, and used waveforms from borehole sensors of KiK-net. From our analysis, we find that stations in the direction of rupture propagation or orthogonal to it, inferred from the slip distribution, best capture the energy release represented in the MRF. Further, we select IMFs not based on their number, for example, IMF 2 to 5 or a combination of IMFs 3 and 4 as proposed in previous studies, but rather based on the frequency band in which the dominant energy is released. This illustration shows the Hilbert spectra of IMFs 3, 4, and 5 decomposed from the 2011 April 7th magnitude 7.1 Miyagi intraslab earthquake. The amplitude squared values, representative of the energy, are plotted on the time frequency plane. We find that selecting IMFs with their peak energy within 0.1 to 3 Hz, a band that partially overlaps with the teleseismic waveform inversion band of 0.01 to 2 or 2.5 Hz, gives the best MRF analog. This frequency band criterion implies that the IMF number and the number of IMFs vary for every earthquake station combination. For this particular case, 3 IMFs, that is IMF 3, 4, and 5 are selected. We then take the linear combination of the selected IMFs, which gives the new time series and Fourier spectrum, plotted in red, over the original time series and Fourier spectrum, which is in gray. For the Hilbert spectrum, we we plot the Hilbert spectrum of each IMF individually, not taking the linear combination of all these selected IMFs. Picking the maximum values along the time axis gives the plot at the bottom, which we call the energy rate function, or ERF. Comparing this ERF with the MRF, or moment rate function, from teleseismic waveform inversion, we see that they have similar shapes. This correspondence implies that we have represented the source using time frequency analysis tools of EMD and HHT. We note here that our methodology does not involve inversion of the strong motion seismic waveforms. Thus, we do not assume any fault parameters or geometry or apply attenuation or path effect corrections. But we employ waveform inversion to obtain the fault and slip models, from which we infer the direction of rupture propagation. We rely upon our proposed criteria for IMF selection that we believe captures the energy release, albeit with some path attenuation and site influences included. Further, we use waveforms from borehole sensors of KiK-net, minimizing the site amplification effects. The proposed moment rate function analog, which we call the energy rate function, serves as a rapid interpretation of the energy release rather than a thorough or elaborate waveform inversion. The ERF shown here at the bottom left is from just one station along the direction of rupture propagation. This map shows the other stations at which this trend is observed, marked in black. As I previously mentioned, stations along the direction of propagation and orthogonal to it are approximately along the trench axis, give an ERF comparable to the MRF. In the following slides, I will quickly show the corresponding results for earthquakes from interplate and intraplate tectonic settings. The 2005 Miyagi-Oki interplate earthquake showed a complex rupture, with a rough MRF also observed by Lei et al. 2012 and Yaginuma et al. 2006. This observation is reinforced by the number of IMFs needed to generate the ERF, which is 4 IMFs from IMF 3 to 6. The ERF and MRF from our analysis match well with those from the other two studies. The energy in these IMFs is in the frequency range of 0.4 to 5 Hz, shown in the Fourier and Hilbert spectra, which is characteristic of such deep interplate events. The results for the 2005 Honshu interplate earthquake highlights two crucial points. First, the ERF-MRF match is obtained even though the estimated seismic intensity at the station location was 3. Secondly, the ERF was generated using only IMF4 with its peak energy around 2 Hz. This result shows the robustness of our technique. The final event is the 2012 Kamaishi intraplate earthquake, modeled as 2 independent events in multiple studies. Harada et al. 2013 and Lee et al. 2013 modeled the event as a deep thrust and shallow normal faulting doublet, separated by around 20 seconds. Craig et al. 2014 obtained 2 dominant pulses of energy release lasting for about 25 to 35 seconds. The pulses were approximately 10 seconds each, and the separation between the two was about 15 to 20 seconds. Our ERF and MRF also show 2 dominant pulses of around 10 seconds each and a total of 30 seconds. This result showcases our technique's ability to resolve complex ruptures, including those with sub-events or multiple events. To summarize, we have employed time frequency analysis tools such as the short-time Fourier transform and Hilbert spectral analysis, along with empirical mode decomposition, to provide a quick representation of the earthquake energy release. The proposed energy rate function captures the source energy release, evident from its comparison with the moment rate function. This correspondence is observed at stations along the direction of rupture propagation and orthogonal to it. Further, we provide a more valid basis for selecting IMFs based on the frequency band and not the IMF number which has been conventionally used. Finally, the analysis of complex ruptures such as the 2005 Miyagi-Oki interplate earthquake and the 2012 Kamaishi intraplate earthquake shows the strengths of our methodology. Thank you.